There is a moment Allah brings you to, where effort no longer works. You prayed harder than ever. You tried longer than most people would. You pushed past exhaustion, and still nothing moved. No doors opened. No signs appeared. Only silence. But Ibn Arabi says this moment is not defeat. It is not rejection. It is not delay. It is the moment when your role ends. Because Allah never asks you to control outcomes. He asks you to reach the limit of sincerity. And when you reach that limit, Allah removes effort from your hands and places trust in your heart. If you are tired, confused, or standing in stillness after doing everything you could, do not turn away. This message is for the ones who reached the impossible and were quietly told, "Be still." 1. The impossible is human effort's final door. Ibn Arabi teaches that the impossible is not a wall meant to stop you, but a door meant to show you where your role ends and Allah's begins. Most people misunderstand this moment. When they reach exhaustion, when every prayer has been made, every effort has been spent, every strategy has failed, they assume they are being punished or ignored. But Ibn Arabi explains something far deeper. Allah does not demand results from the servant. He demands sincerity until the limits of human capacity are reached. The impossible is not failure, it is completion. It is the sign that you have fulfilled your responsibility fully, honestly, without holding anything back. At this point, continuing to push is no longer faith. It becomes resistance. This is why the soul feels heavy, drained, and blocked, because it has arrived at the threshold where human will must step aside. According to Ibn Arabi, Allah allows you to reach the impossible so that you finally release the illusion of control. Only when effort can go no further does divine action reveal itself. The impossible is not the end of the path. It is the exact place where destiny takes the lead, and the servant is asked to trust, not strive. 2. Rest is not laziness. It is tawakkul. According to Ibn Arabi, rest is one of the most misunderstood spiritual states. The world teaches you that stopping means weakness, delay, or giving up. But Sufism teaches the opposite. True rest is tawakkul in its purest form. It is not the rest of someone who has abandoned responsibility. It is the rest of someone who has completed it. When you have done everything within your capacity and still nothing changes, continuing to strive is no longer effort, it is fear disguised as action. Ibn Arabi explains that at this stage, movement from the servant becomes interference, not obedience. Rest is the moment you silently declare, "O Allah, I trust you more than I trust my own effort." This kind of stillness terrifies the ego because it removes its final illusion of control. But for the soul, rest is relief. It is alignment. Tawakkul does not mean doing nothing from the beginning. It means knowing when to stop. And that wisdom to rest without anxiety, to wait without resentment, to be still without doubt, is a sign that faith has moved from the tongue into the heart. 3. Allah acts when the ego steps aside. Ibn Arabi explains that one of the most subtle veils between the servant and Allah is not disobedience nor lack of effort, but the ego that hides inside sincere striving. Many people assume that ego only appears in arrogance or pride, yet Ibn Arabi reveals something far more unsettling. The ego can exist even in prayer, patience, and perseverance. It appears quietly, whispering, "I am the one holding this together. I am the one making this happen. If I stop, everything will fall apart." As long as this belief remains, even in its softest form, divine action stays partially concealed. Not because Allah withholds, but because the servant is still standing in the way. According to Ibn Arabi, Allah's wisdom is never absent. It is simply veiled by self-attribution. When a person believes, even unconsciously, that outcomes depend on their intelligence, discipline, or persistence, they have placed themselves at the center of the affair. In that state, Allah allows effort to continue, often to the point of exhaustion, not as punishment, but as education. The fatigue you feel after long striving is not weakness. It is the soul being gently forced to admit, I cannot carry this anymore. That admission is the beginning of truth. Ibn Arabi teaches that the command to be still usually arrives only after the ego has reached its limit. This is why rest feels frightening. Stillness removes the last illusion of control. When effort stops, the ego panics because it equates movement with existence. It asks, if I am not doing, then who am I? This inner anxiety is not spiritual. It is the ego resisting its own disappearance. But for the soul, this moment is relief. Stillness allows the servant to witness something extraordinary. Life continues, events unfold, and outcomes arrive without their interference. The greatest mistake at this stage is to assume that rest means passivity or failure. Ibn Arabi makes it clear that rest is not the absence of action. It is the absence of egoic ownership. Allah has always been acting, even while you were striving. But your effort made it difficult to see Him as the true doer. When you step aside, divine action becomes visible, not dramatically, not loudly, but with undeniable precision. Doors open that effort could never unlock. Solutions appear without force. Hearts change without argument. What effort struggled to achieve in years may resolve itself quietly in moments. This is why Ibn Arabi emphasizes that Allah's action is most apparent after surrender, not during struggle. The servant does not lose dignity by stepping aside. They regain their true position. You were never meant to carry the burden of outcomes. You were meant to carry sincerity, intention, and trust. When the ego releases its grip, the servant discovers a deeper form of worship, allowing Allah to be Allah. Being still, then, is not retreat, it is alignment. It is the recognition that the self was never the source of power, only the vessel of effort. When the vessel empties itself of control, it can finally be filled with divine will. And this is the secret Ibn Arabi points toward again and again. Allah does not need your force, He needs your consent to step aside. When the ego quiets, the unseen moves freely. And what arrives next is not something you could have planned, earned, or forced, only something you were meant to witness. 4. Silence is a form of divine speech. According to Ibn Arabi, one of the greatest misunderstandings on the spiritual path is the belief that Allah only speaks through signs, words, or visible movement. When life becomes quiet, when prayers seem unanswered, when progress stalls, when nothing appears to be happening, the human mind panics and assumes abandonment. But Ibn Arabi teaches something radically different. Silence itself is a language, and it is one of the most precise forms of divine communication. In Sufi understanding, noise belongs to effort, while silence belongs to wisdom. When Allah places you in a silent phase, He is not withdrawing guidance. He is refining your perception. Words instruct the mind, but silence reshapes the soul. Ibn Arabi explains that as long as the servant is surrounded by constant signs, answers, and movement, they remain dependent on reassurance. Silence removes this dependence. It forces the heart to confront a deeper question. Do you trust Allah only when He speaks in ways you recognize, or even when He is quiet? Divine silence is never empty. It is filled with unseen rearrangement. While nothing seems to change on the surface, countless adjustments are taking place beneath it. Intentions are purified, attachments loosen, and false expectations dissolve. Ibn Arabi describes this phase as one in which Allah protects the servant from premature clarity. If answers arrive too early, the ego would claim them. Silence ensures that when clarity finally comes, It arrives without ownership, without pride, without distortion. This is why silence feels uncomfortable. The ego feeds on stimulation and certainty. It wants constant feedback, visible progress, and clear direction. Silence denies the ego all of this. It removes familiar reference points and leaves the servant alone with trust. Many people break at this stage not because silence harms them, but because they try to escape it. They force decisions, manufacture movement, or abandon patience, mistaking quiet for stagnation. Ibn Arabi warns that interrupting silence often delays what was already on its way. In truth, silence is Allah saying, "Wait, because what is being prepared cannot arrive in noise." Some outcomes require stillness to remain intact. Some transformations must occur inwardly before they can manifest outwardly. Silence slows the servant down so destiny can catch up. It teaches the soul to listen without words, to recognize guidance without explanation, and to remain steady without proof. Ibn Arabi also emphasizes that silence humbles the intellect. The mind wants to analyze, predict, and understand, but silence renders these tools ineffective. This is intentional. Divine realities cannot always be accessed through logic. They require presence. Silence trains the servant to remain present without grasping. In doing so, the heart becomes receptive to subtler forms of guidance, intuition, calm certainty, and quiet knowing. When silence lasts longer than expected, it is often because something within the servant is still speaking too loudly. The moment inner resistance softens, silence transforms from discomfort into peace. What once felt like abandonment begins to feel like protection. And when Allah finally breaks the silence, it is not with chaos but with clarity that feels inevitable. So if you are in a quiet phase now, understand this: Allah has not stopped speaking. He has simply chosen a language deeper than words. Remain still, remain patient, and do not rush the moment meant to arrive complete. Silence is not the absence of guidance, it is guidance in its most refined form. 5. The command to be still is a test of trust. According to Ibn Arabi, the most difficult stage of faith is not effort, sacrifice, or endurance. It is obedience without reassurance. When Allah commands the servant to be still, He is not testing their patience alone. He is testing the depth of their trust. Anyone can rely on Allah while moving, planning, and striving. But to remain calm when nothing is happening, when answers are delayed, and when the future is hidden, this is where tawakkul is revealed as real or imagined. Ibn Arabi explains that stillness strips the servant of all familiar supports. During effort, the heart leans on action. At least I am doing something. But when effort is removed, the servant is left with nothing but reliance. This is why being still feels unbearable to the ego. The ego believes control equals safety. It fears that if movement stops, collapse will follow. Yet Ibn Arabi teaches that this fear itself is proof that trust has not fully matured. True trust is calm, not anxious. It does not demand constant signs. It rests in certainty even when the path is invisible. The command to be still exposes what the heart is truly attached to. Is it attached to Allah or to outcomes? Many people claim reliance, yet their peace depends on results. When results pause, peace disappears. Ibn Arabi says this moment is merciful because it reveals hidden dependencies. Allah removes motion so the servant can see where their trust was misplaced. Only when outcomes are no longer demanded does reliance become sincere. This stage is also where impatience disguises itself as wisdom. The servant begins to rationalize movement. Perhaps I misunderstood. Maybe I should try harder. Maybe this silence means I should change direction. Ibn Arabi warns that such thoughts often arise not from guidance, but from discomfort with uncertainty. The test is not to interpret the silence, but to remain faithful within it. Stillness does not require understanding. It requires submission. What makes this test especially painful is its loneliness. Others may not understand why you are waiting. They may advise action, urgency, or escape. But Ibn Arabi teaches that divine instruction is personal. What looks like delay to others may be precision for you. Obedience in stillness often appears irrational to the world, yet it is deeply aligned with unseen wisdom. Over time, something subtle begins to change. The heart that remains still without resentment becomes lighter. Anxiety softens. Trust deepens, not because circumstances improve, but because dependence shifts. The servant no longer leans on explanations, timelines, or control. They lean on Allah alone. This is the transformation Ibn Arabi points toward. When trust no longer seeks confirmation, it becomes unshakable. Eventually, movement returns, but it is different. It is no longer driven by fear or urgency. It flows naturally, without strain. The servant realizes that nothing was lost during stillness. In fact, clarity, protection, and alignment were gained. The test was never about waiting. It was about who you trusted while waiting. So if you are being asked to be still now, understand this: Allah is not withholding. He is measuring trust. Remain where you are, without forcing, without fleeing, without demanding proof. The command to be still is not a denial. It is an invitation to let trust become complete. 6. Divine timing cannot be rushed. According to Ibn Arabi, one of the greatest sources of suffering on the spiritual path is not hardship itself, but conflict with timing. The human heart is willing to trust Allah's wisdom, but only if that wisdom arrives quickly. When delay enters the picture, faith begins to tremble. Ibn Arabi teaches that this discomfort does not come from delay. It comes from the ego's refusal to accept that divine timing operates beyond human urgency. Divine timing is not slow, nor is it careless. It is exact. Every moment unfolds only when all unseen conditions are aligned. What appears late to the mind is often perfectly synchronized in the unseen. Ibn Arabi explains that Allah delays not to deprive but to protect. Some outcomes, if given too early, would collapse under the weight of misunderstanding, misuse, or pride. Timing ensures that what arrives can be carried without harm. The servant often believes that effort should accelerate destiny. Yet Ibn Arabi reminds us that effort prepares the servant, not the outcome. You are not late because you did not try hard enough. You are waiting because you are still being shaped. Certain doors require a version of you that does not yet exist. If they open now, you would enter unprepared and leave damaged. Delay, then, is not denial, it is refinement. Rushing divine timing is a subtle form of mistrust. It suggests that Allah has forgotten, miscalculated, or delayed without purpose. Ibn Arabi warns that impatience clouds perception. When the heart becomes obsessed with when, it loses sight of why. The servant begins to measure faith by speed instead of wisdom. This creates frustration, comparison, and doubt, none of which shorten the wait. Divine timing also protects others involved in your destiny. Your outcome may depend on changes in people you have never met, events you cannot see, or conditions you do not understand. Ibn Arabi teaches that Allah orchestrates realities far beyond the servant's awareness. To rush timing is to demand an incomplete reality. Waiting allows all elements, visible and invisible, to reach harmony. There is also a hidden mercy in delay. It loosens attachment. When something does not arrive quickly, the heart is forced to release obsession. Desire softens into trust. Expectation turns into acceptance. This inner shift is crucial because what arrives after detachment becomes a blessing instead of a test. Ibn Arabi emphasizes that many people receive what they want only to be destroyed by it because it came before they were ready to hold it without losing themselves. As time passes, the servant who remains patient begins to notice a transformation. The urgency fades. The heart settles. Waiting no longer feels like punishment. It feels like protection. This is the moment when divine timing becomes visible, not through calendars, but through calm. The servant realizes that nothing important has been lost. Everything meaningful is still approaching, intact. When divine timing finally unfolds, it often feels effortless. What once seemed delayed suddenly appears inevitable. Ibn Arabi teaches that this is the sign of correct timing, when events arrive without struggle, without forcing, without resistance. You recognize that waiting did not slow your life. It aligned it. So if you feel delayed now, remember this: Allah is not behind schedule. You are being synchronized with what is meant for you. Do not rush what requires precision. Divine timing cannot be forced, negotiated, or hurried. It can only be trusted. 7. Stillness aligns you with destiny. According to Ibn Arabi, destiny does not resist effort, it resists interference. This distinction is subtle, yet it explains why so many people feel exhausted despite sincere striving. Ibn Arabi teaches that destiny, qadr, flows naturally along its divine course, but the human ego often pushes against it, trying to steer outcomes according to fear, desire, or impatience. When this happens, life feels heavy, blocked, and endlessly delayed. Stillness is not the absence of movement. It is the moment when resistance ends. And when resistance ends, destiny begins to move freely. Most people believe destiny is something they must chase. Ibn Arabi reverses this idea completely. He explains that what is written for you does not require pursuit, it requires alignment. Effort prepares you up to a point, but beyond that point, effort can distort timing and clarity. When Allah asks you to be still, He is not removing progress, He is removing friction. Stillness returns you to the correct current of destiny, where events unfold without strain. The struggle many people experience is not because destiny is against them, but because they are slightly out of alignment with it. They push when they are meant to wait. They speak when they are meant to listen. They decide when they are meant to surrender. Ibn Arabi teaches that destiny is delicate. It does not respond to force. It responds to readiness. Stillness cultivates that readiness by quieting the impulses that misdirect the soul. One of the hardest truths Ibn Arabi reveals is that not all movement is progress. Some movement is avoidance movement away from patience, silence, and trust. When the heart fears stillness, it often means it fears facing Allah without distractions. Stillness removes excuses. It leaves the servant alone with reliance. In this naked state, alignment becomes possible because nothing remains to compete with divine will. Stillness also corrects perception. When the servant is constantly moving, they interpret life through urgency. Everything feels late, wrong, or incomplete. In stillness, perception slows down. The heart begins to see patterns instead of problems. What once felt like delay begins to look like precision. What once felt like confusion begins to reveal coherence. Ibn Arabi emphasizes that destiny is not chaotic. It only appears chaotic when viewed through impatience. Another dimension of alignment is consent. Destiny does not force itself upon the resistant heart. Ibn Arabi teaches that Allah honors the servant's inner state. When the servant insists on control, Allah allows them to struggle. When the servant consents to surrender, Allah allows ease. Stillness is that consent. It is the inner statement. I accept what you are doing, even if I do not understand it. This acceptance does not stop destiny. It activates it. In stillness, attachments begin to loosen. Expectations soften. The servant stops demanding specific forms and outcomes. This flexibility is essential because destiny often arrives differently than imagined. Ibn Arabi warns that clinging to how something should happen can cause a person to miss how it is meant to happen. Stillness clears rigid expectations, so destiny can arrive intact. As alignment deepens, something remarkable happens. Life begins to move again, but without pressure. Opportunities appear naturally. Answers arrive without searching. People enter and exit your life with clarity instead of confusion. This does not happen because you figured something out. It happens because you stopped interfering. Destiny recognizes stillness as cooperation. Ibn Arabi also explains that alignment brings protection. When you are still, you are less likely to act from fear or desperation. Many regrets are born from rushed decisions made in misalignment. Stillness saves the servant from choices that would have delayed destiny even further. Waiting, in this sense, becomes a form of guidance. Eventually, the servant realizes that stillness was not a pause. It was a recalibration. Destiny was always moving. The servant simply needed to return to the correct direction. When this realization dawns, anxiety fades. Trust becomes natural. The heart no longer asks, "When will it happen?" It asks, "How can I remain aligned?" This is the secret Ibn Arabi points toward. Destiny does not need your effort once alignment is achieved. It needs your openness, your consent, your stillness. When you stop pushing against what is unfolding begins to carry you. So if you are in a season of stillness now, do not assume nothing is happening. Something very precise is happening. You are being aligned, not delayed. And when destiny moves next, it will not feel forced. It will feel inevitable. If you have reached the end of your strength, if striving has led you into stillness, and effort no longer moves what you are facing, then understand this clearly. You were not stopped. You were completed. According to Ibn Arabi, Allah does not abandon the servant after effort. He takes over. What you could do, you did. What you could carry, you carried. Now what remains belongs to the divine. Do not rush this quiet. Do not escape this stillness. Do not mistake rest for loss. Because when Allah commands rest, it is not the end of the journey. It is the moment destiny begins to move without resistance. Be still. Remain present. Trust what you cannot yet see. You did the impossible. Now let Allah do what only He can.